Welcome to Feeling Beings Who Think, a podcast project that seeks to find wisdom in conversation through the stories and personal reflections of regular people like you and me. My name is Ariane Rice, and I'm really grateful you're here. So let's get started. I am a person who does yoga. Now, I didn't used to be. I used to be a person who scoffed at yoga and thought of it as some sort of hippy-dippy form of frou-frou exercise that wasn't for me. Because for me, exercise was all about burning calories and losing weight. It was a no pain, no gain mentality. And after my divorce, exercise and losing weight were high priorities. And I found CrossFit. The box, and that's what a CrossFit gym is called, the box was perfect for me. I loved fitting my life into a box, and I loved how empowering lifting heavy weights and doing crunches till I was sick and squats till my legs gave out and channeling all the negative, angry feelings I had into 30 minutes first thing in the morning. I have nothing against CrossFit, but at a certain point, I hurt myself pretty badly. And to make a long story short, that's what led me to yoga and to Kelly, who's been my teacher ever since. So the other day we were working on camel pose, which is a heart-opening pose. You kneel and the bottom half of you is straight and your top half leans and bends back. And as you push your hips forward, you let your head fall backward and you look behind you. Now I find this pose terrifying. This feeling of teetering between falling forward and falling back. I get really scared that I'm going to break in half. And Kelly knows I don't like this pose, but she has me do it anyway, even though that feeling of letting go and trusting in that falling and opening up is really hard for me. So a few weeks ago, I was doing this pose, and as I felt that pull and push, that betweenness happening, I also felt this very strange feeling, something really deep inside me just opened. I don't know how else to explain it. And I burst into tears. And Kelly let me cry and said, "See, Ariane, it's a heart-opening pose. And it looks like your heart kind of needs it." Well, my conversation today with my friend and colleague Berto cannot be fit into a box. It is a heart-opening conversation. And what better time for one, right? No matter your faith or spirituality or the traditions that you honor this time of year, I hope this conversation, which is filled with Rilke's poetry, which has some heretical Christian teachings that causes us both to laugh, and also has Berto's intimate stories of how he came to deepen his experience of God, a God so beyond our words, so beyond our conceptual boxes. Well, I just hope this conversation opens your heart and brings light as it did to mine. So thanks for listening, and I wish you and yours a most joyful, peaceful, and loving celebration in the coming days.
Got it.
Hi there, Berto Gándara.
Good to see you, Ariane Rice.
Oh, it's great
Good
to
have
see
you
you.
here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Long
Thank
time.
you for
Yeah,
being here and making
good to be
time.
here. Yeah.
So as I just said before I pressed record, I would love you to introduce you and how you happen to be where you are, which is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been on the Pacific West Coast.
Yes.
So I'll stop talking now.
So that's my nickname, first of all, Berto. I'm from Puerto Rico, born and raised there. And I live on a beautiful little island off the coast of Washington State. For 23 years, I was a missionary as a Roman Catholic priest. In 2004, I started a process of discernment of leaving the Roman Church and joining the Episcopal Church, which happened in 2006. And I became a priest, and it was received as an Episcopal priest in 2009. I worked in a church in Harlem for 4 years, and then I came all the way to Orcas Island here on a beautiful little church called Emmanuel Church. And I live here with my husband, Hugh Grant, who's also a priest. So we're two priests here in our home. And that's a very summarized way of.
That's a very summarized way. So how long have you been a priest?
I've been a priest, 30 years.
That is a wow.
That's a wow, yes. I just celebrated 30 years of my ordination. It was 1992, July 17th, 1992.
Congratulations.
In Puerto Rico, yeah. In my town of Mayagüez, the cathedral there, which was not a cathedral back then, I think. Or maybe it was, I don't know. Yeah.
So how does the Berto of today talk about the Berto of 30 years ago who went towards the priesthood? Who was that Berto?
You're asking, I just finished a sabbatical. I took three and a half months away. And the last month I spent it with my mom and dad, and wanted just to have quality time with them. They're good health, but it's always good to spend time with them. And I took 3 days to spend them with my brothers, the Redemptorists, which is the order I used to belong to. I spent 3 days with them. And I spent those 3 days at the place where I was a novice in this order. So it was very interesting to sit there, knowing all who I am now, and it's a very familiar place. It was the chapel, I remember. And I said, wow, I've come a long way. It's like in a certain sense, like two different people, like two different persons. 30 years ago when I became a priest. I think the world was very small, and it's just like this. I love the poem, Rilke's poem, I live my life in ever widening circles. And I don't know if I've arrived to the end of. That's how I feel my life has been, like this, like you throw a rock in a pool and it's all these circles that are expanding. And sometimes I'm going to expand all the way. How long am I going to go? But looking back is like this, expansion, like this from this little spot, and not in a bad way, but a smaller world.
That's
I remember that I was studying, I did my postmasters, I went to Europe, and of course that was very eye-opening, but I remember waiting for the subway when I had this very deep feeling. I was a Roman Catholic back then. I need to be Catholic. And it was like this sense of real Catholic, like big Catholic, like this ever widening circle of yes. And that was like this very, very deep sense of, no, you're not Catholic in the Roman Church. You need to be real Catholic.
What is real Catholic?
Precisely to be open to all this wideness of God. I mean, to be able to not to have this Christ and religion all so boxed in, but the possibility of expanding horizons and being able to see the work of God in places that before you would have not have thought it. I think it's the process of maturity in spiritual life to be able to see God ever more present in different places and religions, and being able to be open to all these conversations. And for me, that is being Catholic. That is like, and ultimately will be to see God in all, like the apocatastasis of origin.
Okay, now you're using fancy words that you're going to need to explain.
When everything will be one. Everything will be part of this seeing God completely. And I think that is what we're called to be real Catholic, universal.
Do you
God
think,
everywhere.
do you think when you first were running to, were you running towards it? Was it something that you really wanted to do 30 years ago?
No,
Was it something you fell into? How did it even come to be, the thought cross your mind that you wanted to be a priest?
I didn't want to be a priest. I wanted to be a monk.
Mm.
Since I was very young, it was the experience of God. Talking to people about God, that was not my thing. I was not interested in that. I felt like I need to have it in my heart first. I need to grow in that area, and then maybe I'll share it with others. So the beginning was the monastic life, like religious life. Because in Puerto Rico at the time, there were no religious monastic group that were convincing or like, yeah. And there were some monastic communities. I was raised up in a Benedictine school, but it was not something that was attractive to me.
Were you looking for that contemplative aspect of monastic life? Okay.
Yeah. And then the closest thing I had was a religious community, which was, by the way, the kind of the opposite. It was a missionary. So I became a missionary.
Explain a little bit about what that means, missionary. That was not a part of my background at all.
So missionary are the more traditional people who are called to share the good news of Jesus and go and live in places where that needs to be shared. My experience as a missionary, as a Redemptorist, was to be with the poor. And that was a very important part of my formation back then, which took me out of that monastic, because one of the dangers of monastics and monks is can become very self-centered and inner navel gazing a bit. And my experience with the Redemptorists, and I was part of that group for 23 years. So it was a big part of my life. So they were very much focused on being with the poor, living your Christian life from amongst the poor. So that was what for us meant to be missionary. And interesting enough, being a missionary, as they taught us, was first of all, letting yourself be evangelized by the poor. So before you evangelize them, can you be evangelized by them first? And it sounded like kind of, that's kind of pretty, but to be honest, I can tell two stories of when I went to Dominican Republic. We would go to Dominican Republic, and I lived there for 9 years. It's a very, very poor country. And just my first day of experience, my first day in Dominican Republic and my last day in Dominican Republic are two stories that kind of embody that being evangelized by the poor. So I get to Dominican Republic. There's San Juan de la Maguana. It's a town towards the border with Haiti. And I go out of the parish house. I go out to the plaza, to the square in town. I sit down, and all these kids come to shine my shoes. So they're all grabbing my pants and pulling my legs, because everybody wants to shine my shoes, of course, and get some money. And it was a bit overwhelming for me. And I just said, I don't have money, which was a lie. I don't have any money. And all of them scattered except one. And he looks at me and he disappears, but he leaves his box, his shoe shine box, in front of me, and he just runs. And I'm like, what's going on here? He comes a couple of minutes later with a fried bread thingy, a Johnny cake, and he gives it to me and says, since you don't have any money, here. So talk about evangelized by the poor. Me, who had been telling a lie that I had no money. This little boy took it literally. This gringo has no money he must be hungry. He just went to buy me some food.
Wow.
That's my first day.
Your first day.
So talk about it being evangelized. Okay, I get this. So it was like, before you start missionary and preaching the gospel, first of all, you might just be quiet and let them preach the gospel to you. So that was like a very real being preached at. It was almost a slap in the face to me. And this last time, after 9 years living there, I was sent to Europe, to France. So I'm a parish priest in a village in a town called Las Matas de Farfán, and just by the border with Haiti. I've been there as a priest for 5 years. I have a dog here who's biting my books. The Making of a Heretic. This is the one he chose.
He's chewing on that book, The Making of a Heretic.
The Making of a Heretic. Gender Authority and the Priscillianist Controversy. Hey, I don't know. He picked it. He took it out of the bookshelf there. So the last day, it was not exactly the last day, but it was the week before I was leaving. A woman calls me to visit her husband, and they live in this it's a metal box, literally a metal box, dirt floor in town, which is even worse than in the countryside. So it's very, very hot. There's no windows. It's just everything is there and super, super poor. This man is very sick and he's just a little bad, and just give him the prayers of those who are dying. The week after I go there, she comes to my goodbye party to send me to France. Okay. When she says goodbye, she gives me a hug, and she gets in my hand, she puts 5 pesos, which is about 20 cents. But for her, that's a lot of money.
Right.
So that to help you get to France. That was like, so that's like the bookends of my experience in the Dominican Republic. So that is what I think a missionary is. Instead of me preaching to them, I think it was beginning and ending how they preached to me.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And so I think antithetical to when you say the word missionary, I don't think that.
Yeah.
I think about somebody that goes and tells somebody what to believe.
Exactly.
And it sounds like those stories also shifted your belief.
Yeah. And that's the beginning of this process of expansion. Not me as the priest, who's the missionary is going to go teach you. I mean, that was a breaking of a way of understanding God and church and Christianity. Wait a minute, these people have something to teach me, and better shut up and let them speak. Yeah.
How do you describe the feeling of wanting to be a monk and wanting to experience God?
How to explain the feeling of it? It's above all a feeling. It's this feeling that God is such a reality that it is someone you enter into a relationship with. And monastic life is sort of a courtship, a relationship with God in which you engage these conversations. I mean, daily meetings, dates with God. I think that's the whole reason to grow into that intimacy. And the contemplative tradition and the mystical tradition call it union with God, espousal, getting married with God, are symbols that have been used.
You just made a face when you said the getting married that I...
Yeah, because
what that face is?
Huh? What that face is?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's like it can be corny. Corny is the word?
Yes,
Corny, like,
corny cliche.
yeah,
Yes.
I'm married with Christ.
Hmm.
It doesn't sound, it's doesn't get there. So it's like, that's one of the things about spiritual language, that language is so bad. And my face is like, yeah, you try to explain something and it, no, it's sort of like that, but not that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that is, and I think all of religion should be like that.
Hmm.
Starting with the Bible, like you can't. Yeah, it's sort of that, but it's not that. So that's why I go crazy with literalisms, because they're missing the boat. It's not that. It's, you can only experience it. And when you try to talk about it, it's like getting married to God. Ugh, sounds so awful, but it is that. It is intimate. It's a connection. Yeah, it is real. The presence of God. But
I'm sorry, you just made me remember that a priest who is now a bishop,
uh-huh.
she told me that when she first approached the priest in her church, this was in Texas, when she first approached the priest to say, I think I might be called to the priesthood, he looked at her and said, well, you can't be a priest because you can't get married to the church because the church is the bride of Jesus, and that would be a lesbian relationship, and that's not allowed.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, there is a problem with the whole
With
marriage
that language, of course.
metaphor, and also obviously that interpretation.
But as a gay man, that sounds very nice to me. Getting married to Jesus? Look at that man who's so beautiful. Of course.
So this feeling, this love feeling, because also, the ecstasy feeling of union with God. And I am kind of reading a lot these days around Teresa of Avila and some 15th, 14th century female mystics. And the language is effusive in talking about a love for Jesus and God. That's sexual even at times. And would certainly make people uncomfortable, probably. And who's the sculptor, the Teresa of Avila famous sculptor, Teresa and Bernini. I mean,
in the Church of All Angels. Yeah,
yes.
I visited that place. I went precisely to see that sculpture in Rome.
And how would you describe that sculpture?
It's gorgeous. I mean, the church is incredible, but for those of you who haven't seen it, it's Teresa of Avila. She's like reclining, and there's this angel kind of above, in front and above, with an arrow, and he's about to pierce her, and she's just in this ecstasy. And some people have commented that her face is the face of an orgasm. That she has this, like, just completely ecstatic, being pierced, literally. And then, of course, it sounds like this is corny, like, ugh. But it is. I mean, that's the closest thing we can. Many people have spoken, and they got in trouble precisely because of things like that.
And I think
a great mystic called Marguerite Poiret. Have you heard about her?
No, I have not.
Marguerite Poiret. She was killed. She's not famous because she was killed, and she wrote a book, and she was, it was, all the other mystics would start like Teresa. I am this poor woman. I am very ignorant. I submit myself she had none of that. This is what God has spoken, and this is what I'm sharing with you. Like it or not. June 1st, 1310, she was burned in Paris, right there in front of the Hôtel de Ville in Paris. And her memory was kind of forgotten, but her book was saved, especially by monks, by the Carthusians, especially. And they kept this book very much alive. And it talks about, she uses chivalry poetry, the knight and the damoiselle, the love poems, to describe her relationship with God, with Christ. And that was too much. But in 1970, an Italian woman, pieced the two together. and from letters, the Inquisition papers, and this surviving that everybody thought it was someone else's book, she was able to prove this woman that was killed is the author of this document, this book that has been going on and preserved in all these monasteries, very well read, but because it was disjointed from the woman who was killed, it was saved. So it's a fascinating story.
Oh, I have to find it, because Margaret Perret. When I first started trying to read Teresa of Avila, I had to put it down because it made me angry the way she was speaking of herself. And then it took somebody explaining to me, well, that's how she survived the Inquisition 5 times.
Exactly. That is.
A woman had to write that way.
And all of that of Teresa and all these, it was a way to survive.
Oh, I have to find this woman who boldly proclaimed.
And the Inquisition, one of the epithets, you say, that we'll call her, she was, I can't remember. She's a pretend man. Yeah, that was the accusation. She was
that she was pretending to be a man?
Yeah, but it was like an insult. This quasi man, this unworthy. She thinks too much of herself. Yeah.
One of the jokes I used to make at seminary when it came to some of the stuff around men and women, I was like, it seems to me that men have been trying to find a way to wear these dresses for a really long time, because everything we wear as clergy is very feminine.
It is. It is. And it's interesting, yes, so many in the Roman Church, there's so many feminine things in liturgy, and it attracts a lot of the feminine, many women, many gay men. Yeah.
So I think it is important for me to ask for you to share a little bit about what brought you from the Roman Church into the Episcopal Church.
Well, one thing was that sense of being Catholic, like wanting to be really Catholic, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but I think it's true. Wait a minute, this way of being church is too little. And when I leave the Catholic Church, I don't kind of discard it. No, I bring it with me. And all the things I've learned in the Episcopal Church from the Protestant, from the Reformation, and then I've been Buddhism and Hinduism and the world, like, okay, this is real Catholic. So that was one. And then there were practical things. One was the role of the laity. As a priest in the Dominican Republic, I had a parish. We were 3 priests, and we had a parish that had 82 communities that met every Sunday.
Wow.
So I had a meeting with I was in charge of Sunday school. I had a meeting with my Sunday school teachers, and I took them to the beach. There were 200 Sunday school teachers.
Oh my gosh.
Thousands of kids. I mean, my first baptism, I was a deacon, and you can go baptize. You want to go baptize? Sure. When I get there, the whole church is full, and I say, how many are here for baptism? Oh, Father, there's just 104.
Oh my gosh.
So that was my baptism by fire. 104 the first day. So it was a huge parish. I mean, crazy. Thus, it was not because we were very open and liberal minded. It was simply for efficiency. We had 2 young adults who became part of our mission, our parish team, and a nun. And the 3 of them, and the 3 of us priests, we divided, and they had responsibilities. In the Roman Church, I got them permission from the bishop to baptize, like ordinary baptism. They would do baptism because, 104.
Yeah, it's not possible.
82 communities. It was like crazy. So they would leave the word and of course, they couldn't celebrate the Eucharist in the tradition, the Catholic tradition, is the priest. But baptism, yeah, they would do baptisms.
Uh-huh.
So there, I living in that special circumstances, the role of the laity, how laity and the Episcopal Church it's very strong in that element of the participation of laity, the participation of women.
Uh-huh.
For that nun, I mean, she was incredible. She was a Spanish nun. She would go on her donkey. We had communities that took us like 6 hours to get up there on our mules, not donkeys. Donkeys are terrible for going up the mountains, and horses are terrible. Mules are really good. They're very steady and very sure-footed. So we had our mules that took us up into the mountains, and she would go there, and I mean, the circumstances she would have to live. She went to a house, the husband and the woman and the kids, and the man said, "Well, sister, where do you want to sleep? You can sleep here with me, you can sleep with the kids," or he says, "I'll sleep with the kids." And he was like clueless about that. This man was inviting me to sleep with him. No bad intention, but it was like in another place, in another world. Very, very like simple and beautiful. And she was like incredibly dedicated, and not being able to see her do things that I could do. And that was always felt, that I had to go to celebrate the Eucharist. It was me. And I don't think this is what God wants. This is kind of, why are all these people now? So that was another thing. And celibacy was another. The gay man hearing the pain and the suffering many go, either being gay or simply dealing with sexuality that is so full of shame and embarrassment, and this is not healthy. So yeah, I think that's more or less.
What do you think makes it so scary for us to talk about these feelings when it comes to things like sexuality in religion and faith?
Well, feelings you become vulnerable, I think. I think it's hard because it's interesting how those two go together. We were talking about religion and sexuality. I think in sexuality, it's when you become the most vulnerable. You are just at the mercy. I mean, you're overtaken by something that is so powerful. And I think religion is the same. It's something that like takes your heart, and you're sort of like, I'm lost control in a certain sense. It's something that overtakes me. Maybe it's because it puts you in a very vulnerable spot. Both situations, sex and religion.
Yeah.
It really puts you like, I'm kind of naked here.
Yes. Yes. There was a time when I thought that this podcast should be called Naked Priest, simply because I wanted it to be something where people were being real about being a priest, and how you're not something other than being a person. But many people said, and they're right, like that naked priest is going to not go over well in too many situations.
Well, it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it is uncomfortable. The images and yeah.
You know,
it's interesting. That's another reason I became an Episcopalian, I think. The being in the Roman system, the priest, I mean, in all religions, I think the religious leader has this up there. But in the Roman system, I think it's even more, because you're celibate, or at least you're supposed to be celibate. And there's a lot of like, you are this something extra, something super
holy. You are super. I was raised from Catholic, and that's how we thought of the priest. You were set apart.
Yeah. And that's why my mom said, when I became a priest, and I was like 28 when I was ordained. And she looks at me, I can't believe you're a priest. I had this image of priests, and now I see you and you're a priest. That those two don't go together. Because I know you well. But there is this image that you're trying to preserve, and I think it's very unhealthy because it makes you put this front that you're supposed to uphold, and it's not real. In the Episcopal Church, I felt much more able to be like to preach on Sunday. I tell them I'm preaching to myself here.
Yeah.
I'm the first one. Then this is all about me, and you can ask Q how this applies to me.
That's so funny, because one of the things I was thinking about today, knowing we'd be talking, was when I first met you at General Seminary. It was because we were in the same advisory group. Titus was our advisor. We were in the same advisory group.
That advisory group.
I remember that, and he had us go around and say a little bit about ourselves. And the minute you said you were a Roman Catholic priest, and then proceeded to talk about your career and vocation, I sat there going, I'm not going to say the word in this podcast because the conversation is too beautiful. I don't want to sell it, but blank, he's the real deal. What am I doing here? How could I he's a real priest. I'm the poser. Because this is the priests are people that are different. I can't be a priest.
Yeah.
I'm just a person, and I'm a woman, and women aren't supposed to be priests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So surely there was a part of you that knows that feeling somewhere.
Yeah.
When do you still have that feeling sometimes? How do you navigate? I mean, I think people feel it in professions other than being priests.
Yeah, and especially, what is that called?
Imposter
syndrome.
Yeah.
People, women, people of color, tend to suffer it more. I feel it more in the U.S. than in Puerto Rico. I still remember going to seminary, and I've studied after I finished my MDiv, which was 4 years. I did 8 more years of study. And someone asked me, "Oh, so that's like the equivalent of an MDiv, like 12 years of college, of university after high school. That was equivalent as a 3-year MDiv." And I said, I think that's a little bit more. Maybe it's
just a little.
But it was the reality that, here people are really smart, and I'm kind of like this from Puerto Rico. Imagine that. I didn't go to any fancy school. I'm less than. Yeah. And at the same time, more than. My first parish, there were 3 priests who, one retired, some got a new job. I get sent alone half-time. When I leave, they're 3 again.
Wow.
So I'm supposed to be this Superman, like, wow. Which I don't know is it an appreciation or
responsibility and projection?
Yeah. So it can be complicated. Yeah. So I suffer from that, and yeah. Am I real? Yeah, that's the big question. Am I real? Am I a real Christian? Am I real?
That's so right. So this is, am I real? Right. Am I a real Christian? Am I a real priest? Am I a real follower? Am I really a beloved child of God? And, before I hit record, you and I were talking about a book study group you're doing. And one of the people in the book is really maybe overly concerned with the literal understanding of the Virgin Mary. And it occurs to me that today I went to see my Carmelite spiritual director this morning, and she reminded me it's the Feast of the Immaculate Conception.
It is true.
And which, am I correct? The Feast of the Immaculate Conception is really a celebration of Anne, Mary's mother.
Yes.
And that Mary was conceived in an immaculate way. So, I mean, I can't.
It has nothing to do with sex.
It has nothing to do with sex.
No.
Just explain what it is.
That Mary is conceived without original sin.
Right.
That Mary is a pure vehicle, a pure vessel, a pure for the wisdom of God. She is
bearing God. Right. So, and I remember when I started learning all this somewhat a little bit more deeply in seminary, and almost laughing at the way in which we trip over ourselves to intellectually make sense of whatever purity is. And here you and I are talking about wondering if we feel like real, whatever, fill in the blank. And that theological concept is all about like, this is the realest of real people. Like only somebody made like this could possibly bear the Son of God.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. And I just find this so, you know, we're coming up on Christmas. Yeah. And this conversation will go into the world at Christmas. And it occurred to me as you were introducing yourself, here you are at the Church of Emmanuel. You know, your church name is what we celebrate at Christmas, God with us. Yeah. And the whole point of the story, or one of the major points is incarnation. God had to be one of us as real, meaning as failing and faulty and suffering and sometimes fake as all of us humans are. And we're obsessed with the real. Right.
And all of it is taken in. And I think that is a beauty, that Mary and Christ, for me, they're like, they oscillate between each other. In Jesus, we see God becoming human. And in Mary, what I see is our humanity becoming divine, and it's they're going back and forth. And it's as soon as you get too comfortable in the too divine, you have it's human, and as you get too human, there's the divine. It's like the Trinity. As soon as you talk about three, you need to move to one, but then as soon as you get too focused on one, it's three. And it's this paradox of, the Immaculate Conception and the donkey shit in the manger. So all of that goes together. Yeah, the Immaculate Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we're talking about virginity, and we're thinking virginity like her sex, and I had no idea, and I don't want to get into Mary's thing, what she did or not do, because it really doesn't matter.
Right.
And for example, one of the most beautiful explanations I've had, and this is very heretical for some, is that Mary was raped. And they even called, they had a name. It was a Jewish tradition that she was raped by a Roman soldier called Panthera. And I've always liked to look at it, if that happened, she is a virgin. That was without her consent. I mean, the physics of how did she give birth? I mean, you can, the miraculous could be one, but what much more miraculous would have been that out of something like this violence, something so holy would have come out. And I know that scares people away, and that might be like too much to think, oh my God. But I think if we react that way, it's like we have trouble identifying the holy in something as unpure as that. It says, wait a minute, no, that didn't take any iota of Mary's virginity and her purity, whatever you want to talk. That pureness of purity of heart, that's the most important thing she had. And whatever happened, I really don't care. What I believe is, this young woman, brave woman, courageous woman, opened her heart And her openness of heart was so big that she gave birth to the Word of God.
I'm getting a little overwhelmed.
We have a service here that we change the endings for when you finish the reading in church, that we say the Word of God, or
thanks be to God,
or thanks be to God. So I have one of my services here. We've changed the ending. So the lector ends by saying, "May the word be to us not a mute and written word, traced with dumb signs on lifeless parchments." And the response is, "but an incarnate living word, vividly impressed in our hearts." This comes from Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. And he has, this phrase is, Bernard puts these words in Mary's mouth. It is Mary who says, "I don't want this dumb, lifeless scribbling on parchments. I want the living word."
Yes.
And that's what I want to give birth. Not this dumb signs on lifeless parchments.
Right.
The Bible.
Right.
I want the real thing. I want the Word of God.
Flesh. Yeah. The infleshed Word of God in the world.
Yeah. I love that phrase of Bernard of Clairvaux. It was a sermon on the Nativity, on the Incarnation. He goes over, in my sabbatical, I just took time to read his sermons. And that's his whole thing. To give birth. I give birth. That is the whole Christian life, is to birth God. This
seeking and experience of God, for me, is always about pursuing questions that lead to more questions that are answered by people sharing their stories. That's how you come to whatever the quote unquote answer is that you're looking for. And then it's also the experience of knowing, and I know I'm saying this while I'm talking, but when to stop talking and to be present to something that's happening.
And being in awe.
And
which for me is
right.
The whole thing about fear of God, which a lot of people, I don't want to be fearful of God, is awe. We use awe. That is the whole thing.
Right.
It's not about James Webb's telescope. Did you notice that?
Yes,
the images of all the galaxy. This is a grain. It's the view of all those millions of galaxies is just what the space of a grain of sand at arm's length. That is the amount. If that is the universe, just a little tiny bit of universe, God, I mean, if you compare those things, me preaching on Sunday, I mean, what am I talking there?
Right.
To be honest, I mean, it is what we can do, but it is much bigger. I mean, we have no clue. And the time I can get face to face with that, it will be scary. It will be fearful in a good sense of like, oh my God.
Right.
Oh, I had no clue. It's much bigger than anything I could imagine. And I think that's the beauty of the spiritual journey, of like just it's like throwing yourself in this, oh my God, this is wow.
Yeah.
It's like a roller coaster ride. This is big, incredibly beautiful and big.
I was going to ask, like, what do you think people are longing for at Christmas, to hear? But I think they're longing to hear that.
Yeah. And to Christmas, to go beyond the past, the 2,000 years and the manger and the creche. That's why I like the Christmas 3 readings, the prologue of John.
Yes.
It's like we're invited in Christmas to be Mary, to give birth. I mean, what we're invited is much bigger than the little story of the shepherds, and it is something huge. It's me giving birth. It's the incarnation. And then we talk about the Eucharist, like this piece of bread is the body of Christ. That's another incarnation. It's not only Christ becomes human. Christ become wheat and wine and grape juice and pine trees. And then, of course, some people will, this is pantheism. Well, this is I'm saying it. Christ became human.
Mm-hmm.
Christ became bread and wine. I truly believe that. So what I'm saying is the consequences of incarnation is like, it's much bigger than the cute story of the Magi and the and
but that cute story isn't scary.
but it is a challenging. For example, I always like to tell that mule or donkey and the cow, they're always present in the manger.
Yeah.
And they're there for a reason. It is an admonition. There's a passage in Isaiah, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
the donkey and the ass can recognize their master. And for me, every time I see it, it's like, Berto, me, the ass,
Mm-hmm.
can see the Christ present, the divine presence. Do you really see it? Not here in the manger,
Right.
not only here in church. Can you see God? Can you really see? I see it. Can you see it? So they're always taunting me, the ass and the donkey
Yeah.
and the cow in the manger. They're always challenge me. I, who am a simple beast, I'm able to recognize my master. Can you recognize? And I think that is the gift and the challenge of Christmas. Can you recognize me?
Yeah.
Can you see me? Where am I being born?
Are you looking?
Yeah, first of all, are you looking?
Are
Yeah.
you looking?
This is this Sunday's scripture reading. Notice that this gospel of coming up,
Yeah.
there's all these see. You come out into the world to see a reed,
Right.
to look, and then to see fancy robes, to see the prophet. And it was this seeing. I think that is the open eyes.
Well, that's interesting. So, and I'm just going to say this and we'll figure out about that if I keep it in or whatever. But yes, this Sunday is the third Sunday of Advent,
Yeah.
right? Third Sunday. And in my mind, where I'm headed for the insignificant preaching I'll do is contrasting, because we're going to do the Magnificat, Mary's song, as the canticle instead of the psalm, and contrasting this, that's why I was overwhelmed when you were really explaining her bold, courageous, yes, I will, and I want to give birth to this living word of God. And you contrast that 14-year-old courage with those men going to try and see John the Baptist and ask him, is this the guy? Is Jesus really the guy? Is this who we're supposed to see? And he's, countering with, what's the certainty you're looking for? Why? You're the adults. These are the adult men. And they're insisting on having literal answers and figuring it out before they trust. And Mary, the young child, just trust.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how does she have all this trust? Why can't I have all this trust?
Although there's a different interpretation. There's a Syriac father of the church, Jacob Sarug, and he has an explanation of Mary in the Annunciation. And she gets into a theological conversation with the angel.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Explain that to me. And she, and I love that other Mary, like, wait a minute. Explain to me, angel.
Mm-hmm.
No, not so fast. I want a little bit more clarity about this. So that was another way. Her yes came after a theological debate with the Archangel Gabriel. And she didn't say her yes before clarifying some things.
I wouldn't put that past her either. That's what I love. I love this, and it's nice to know you're reminding me that there is this tradition, and I don't know why we get so hung up on it, but like really giving life to these stories and really making these people real by infusing them with ways of being that, may or may not have actually happened, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're just human beings. And
it what gives you life at the end. It's all midrash. The literal story, okay, but how does it give you life? And there's no one that reads anything, even the newspaper, in one way. We're always putting our own spin into things. So let's not be that afraid of it.
Yeah.
It's a reality. We all bring in to the stories to make them ours, to make them our stories. So we've always been doing it. Don't be afraid.
That's where I need to end this beautiful, beautiful conversation, and this idea of expansiveness. And we are bringing our stories into the story to get closer and closer to God in whatever way we want to call God.
Look up that poem by Rilke. I live my life in ever widening circles.
Thank you, Berto.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure to being with you.
I hope you have a blessed Advent and very joyful Christmas.